the scientific revolution lecture that will be hopefully very, very brief. I'm just going to open this up. So this is just to give you guys a little bit of a sense as to like what you guys really kind of need to, need to know for like your test. So basically, this talks about daily goals, and honestly, this is a little bit more, I would say, basic for what we want to do. I really just want us to think about overall how the scientific revolution contributed to the Enlightenment, because obviously the Enlightenment plays a major role in the decision of the American colonists, a very select group, obviously, of American colonists to declare independence from Great Britain. So obviously when we talk about the Enlightenment, you have to understand the sort of major scientific movement that predates it, which is the scientific revolution, in which heliocentric versus geocentric views of the universe fundamentally change the way people obviously understand their universe. But more importantly, old ways of thinking are replaced with new ways of thinking, although there are many groups who are obviously reluctant to accept this new way of thinking. Okay, so we're going to skip this. Nobody cares. I mean, that's not true. People care, just not us right now. Okay, so a lot of this is actually not necessarily notes or specific content. These are like discussion questions, so I'll discuss them, and you can, and by discuss, I mean you can listen to me talk about them. So before the Renaissance, which is a time period beginning in Italy in like 1250 and spreads to the rest of Europe by around 1500, the Renaissance basically meaning the rebirth, in which very elite and educated, generally Italian aristocrats, but then obviously other people in Europe, decide that Greek and Roman ideas, obviously which they predate Christ, are like totally amazing and should help us understand the world. But anyway, but before the Renaissance, how did most people decide what was true or false in the world? And obviously this is the institution of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church tells you sort of basically all you need to know about your life from birth to death. And if we had a lot of time, we could talk about all the ways in which the Catholic Church guide people's lives, but we don't have all the time in the world. But just know this, that basically from birth, from cradle to the grave, your life is guided by the Catholic Church. Any questions that you may or may not have, but may have, would be answered by your priest or some other knowledgeable religious figure in your life, but most likely a priest. So what world events might be changing people's knowledge, people's method for understanding things? Well, you have two important moments. One predates the other. The first is the Crusades. The Crusades take place in, they begin in, I think it's 1095. Pope Urban makes a call for Christian Europeans to regain the Holy Land from the infidels, who are the Muslims, obviously in the Middle East, regain Jerusalem. And the Crusades actually, although they begin in 1095, span all the way to roughly the mid-1400s with varying levels of success depending upon, the century, the ruler, and all sorts of other complicated things. But the Crusades, as bloody as they are and as unsuccessful really as they are of Christians regaining Jerusalem, brings back a lot of knowledge to Europe that they had obviously prior to this not really been aware of. Muslims are much more comfortable in looking at Muhammad or pre-Christ thinkers, philosophers, so they are totally comfortable with looking at Aristotle and Plato. They don't find that this is a sort of contradiction to their beliefs. Or in Christian Europe, basically anyone who lives before Christ, although they might be interesting people, are heathens and infidels and like evil. But the Crusades brings back a lot of knowledge that makes life in Europe much easier. And they also have things, so they have ideas and stuff that Europeans want, which obviously leads us to the big sort of major thing, which we're going to skip through here, which is European exploration, which is the other major world event that contributes to the scientific revolution. So you have the Crusades, which then prompt Europeans, and obviously it's kind of like a review, prompt Europeans to want to explore. Obviously this map indicates to you really, pretty much they're interested in going to, Asia, spice here, but India, if you look here, obviously, the Middle East is great, but like Europeans don't want to have to go all the way through here to get to, really, this is where they want to get. They want to get here. The Spice Islands especially, but India and Asia have lots of stuff that they want. And Europeans are aware that the Middle East really has sort of a stronghold on all this stuff, and as a result of the Crusades, more and more of this information is getting to here, and they want to basically cut out, this is me drawing an X, cut out the Middle East. So European exploration begins in 1492, obviously with Columbus, and then subsequent voyages from other empires, France and England, the Dutch, the Portuguese. They also sort of are vying for control. But it's these two world events that change the way people see the world. So we're just continuing on this sort of, why would, the age of exploration create doubt in the Christian view of the world? They believe, if you think about it, remember that scene from the Columbus movie where Columbus is trying to get funding for his voyage, and he goes to a very sort of, remember that guy who's like some religious figure? He's kind of like not totally nice, and he doubts Columbus's ability to get to the New World because accepted church teachings would say that's impossible. So the Catholic Church has a fundamental view of the world which has gone unchallenged for hundreds of years, and Columbus overturned that. And this therefore creates doubt, and obviously if you are dogmatic, organized religion, you want to limit the amount of doubt because doubt creates dissension, and that's not good. But once this becomes obvious, people want to get there faster. So you have all sorts of, oh, Columbus was right, let's sort of look at these calculations again, and then you also have, well, he's right and we want to get this stuff, so how do we get there faster? So this view, this is Copernicus, obviously, this is the heliocentric view of the universe, which contrasts with, bear with me, this geocentric view. The geocentric view is that the Earth is obviously at the center, which is the Ptolemaic, or Ptolemy, who's a really famous early 2nd century thinker, Greek thinker. And this is the accepted view that the Earth is at the center. And this makes sense based upon like what we see in the night sky, right? So you can literally look, and all these questions are basically like, Earth is most important. We are made in God's image, so obviously we would be at the center. And there's only so much you can understand based upon the tools that you have available at the time, right? Like, based upon our knowledge right now, we know that there are other galaxies and other solar systems and other, but really we realize that we have a very limited amount of information. So there's only so much we can really understand about the universe. And this is the same is true, obviously, of a geocentric view. This is then obviously contrasted by Copernicus, who then promotes the heliocentric theory, which is obviously reality. And he doesn't publish his findings until his death because he doesn't want to get in trouble with the Catholic Church. I'm doing a recording for a lecture, so I can't talk to you. Bye, Matt. Sorry. I said that with love. All right. These two guys support Copernicus. Kepler especially is important. Kepler sort of expands. This is look at all you have all this look at the stars, and he talks about Copernicus thinks everything's really round, really circular. But Kepler realizes that it is ellipses, that the planets travel on ellipses. Don't ask me how they figure this out, okay? Like, I'm a history teacher. I like learning about the history of science. I, myself, am not a scientist. Not for me. I'm amazed that anyone knows anything ever at all. And look at this lovely picture. Okay. Galilei, obviously really important, discovers that there are moons orbiting Jupiter, doesn't realize that there's more than 63 of them, but 4, discovers that there are sunspots on the sun, and he basically says that these celestial bodies, which people believed were made of, I don't, like sparkly fairy dust, like who knows, right, like really sort of otherworldly things, are actually made of matter, much like Earth. So if you believe that the celestial heavens are heavenly, and then you discover that they're made out of the same thing as what we're made out of, it kind of puts in jeopardy this idea that what is heaven? Okay, so Galileo gets in big trouble. And all the churches get upset with him, and he is forced to recant and take back what he says. Otherwise, and he's put under house arrest for the rest of his life, even with recanting. And the Catholic Church is obviously really reluctant to rescind or take back this power that they have, which controls all of people's lives. Okay, this is a scientific method, obviously. So you have a question or a problem, you observe something repeatedly, and you realize that something's not quite right. So you form an argument, and then you test it. This scientific method, this is created during the scientific revolution. It's so rote for us, it's hard to believe that people never did this. But this is a new and radical way of thinking. Okay, so you have the scientific method basically relies, old science, and I'm air quoting, you obviously can't see me, science before the scientific revolution was really sort of like looking at what other people said and analyzing it over and over and over and over. So really sort of smart, ancient authorities, people like Ptolemy, but people not really like Plato, but like people who were accepted by the Catholic Church. Catholic Church were like, these people are okay. And when we say common sense, I mean common sense like looking around you, even though obviously your five senses can tell you a lot about the world, we're fairly limiting. New science is this sort of process that we use even today, observation, experimentation, using reasoning to sort of get new knowledge. Oh, I'm reserving them. Okay, I'm going to do this fast then. Okay. Bacon and Descartes, Francis Bacon and René Descartes, neither who are scientists or mathematicians. Oh, no, actually, they are mathematicians. They're like philosophers. They're not scientists. They're thinkers, they're philosophers. They apply mathematic principles to philosophy. And Descartes is known as the father of rationality. Newton, obviously Isaac Newton, really important, comes up with the theory of gravity, and he kind of puts this idea out that God is not this hand in your life on an everyday basis, but more like God created the universe and then stepped back and lets everything unfold. So the Puritan idea, if you look at the 1687, Puritans are obviously, going strong in New England. The Puritan idea that God is in your life in everyday way, according to Newton, would be like untrue. Like God, if something falls off a wagon, it just, it falls off a wagon. It's not like God's doing. So this is obviously one of the reasons, by the way, where the Salem witch trials actually lead to this sort of collapse of the Puritan structure in New England and lead to the Congregationalists, because with the scientific revolution and then Salem witch trials are kind of bad, right? Leads to sort of like their collapse. Okay, and there are all these cool tools here. Like, look at that. Oh, that guy, the kid in the middle, is getting right here. This is a smallpox vaccination, or like inoculation. It's kind of like an early vaccination system. So you basically can apply all these principles to the Enlightenment. Think about how the Enlightenment takes these mathematic and scientific principles and applies them to philosophy and then the way in which people interact with their government. So if you study government the way people are studying the universe, you can find certain truths about the government and then change them based upon what you need to work, right? So the categorization and analysis of certain kinds of governments, that's an Enlightenment principle, because the same kind of principles are being applied, obviously, to the categorization and analysis of the universe. And that's kind of the lecture. And all in all, you want to understand how the scientific revolution contributes to the Enlightenment, in that the principles discovered in the scientific revolution and embraced during the scientific revolution then influence the way that people, very elite, very wealthy, aristocratic people, interpret the relationship between the people, again I'm air quoting, people and their government. The end. If you have any questions about this, we can talk about it when we review in class. All right, hope this helped.